Welcome back. My guest this week is a noted economist. We refer to him frequently on this show. He is an author of the Book of Numbers, A World Without Men. He's the author of Enjoy the Decline, The Menu, and my personal favorite, The Curse of the High IQ. He's also the owner of assholeconsulting.com. Please welcome the legend, Cappy Aaron Clary, to the program. How you doing, man?
I'm living the dream. Living the dream.
How's it going, man? Hey, listen, I one of the things, obviously Rollo would talk about you a lot before we met. Mm-hmm. And then I started reading your books. And by the way, one of the things I appreciate, your books are not that long. You can get through any. Yeah. I get through some of them in like a day. Mm-hmm. And you have this overarching theme of the economics of dating. And no one really studies it. They sort of do. And obviously, Myron expounded in that in his book.
Yes.
And I just really love that you took a scientific approach to this. It was one of the things that I think captured a lot of people's attention. I forgot the statistics specifically, but it was like 16,000 swipes that a woman will go through before she goes on like 10 dates or less than 10 dates.
Almost single digits.
Yeah.
And that's just one Tinder analytics thing. And anyone can look that up, search Tinder analytics image. And what a lot of women were doing is posting their, it shows you a chart. It almost looks like a storm cloud. So here's 16,000 swipes, and then it looks like this little lightning bolt that comes down.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what's that? That's how few she swiped right on.
Yeah.
Out of the 16,000. So then and it goes down almost by a rule of factor of 10. So there's like maybe 1,000 people she swiped right on. Then that's whittled down to 100 who chatted, and then inevitably when you get down to it, there's single digits of people that
so like it would be like 16,000 swipes. Mm-hmm. She'd swipe right, like you said, 1,000 times, maybe 3 or maybe 200 matches,
right?
And then she'd go on 10 dates,
right?
Maybe.
Exactly.
And that's crazy, because what would that would, and then you read the stats where basically women find 80% of men to be unattractive. My favorite thing is below average attractiveness. 80% of people are below which, by the way, mathematically can happen, but it's just like, what that means the men who are attractive are so outrageously attractive that they're 80% are below average attractiveness. And then 4.5% of men being so attractive. And it's funny, that number 4.5%, because 2 standard deviations is 95.5%.
Right.
So outside of that would be 4.5%. 4.5% of men being so attractive that women would actually pursue them.
Right.
And it's just interesting when you see that. And then the concept that you've said before is that women just aren't women just don't like men that much.
Right.
Just in general. Obviously, if you're in a relationship, your girlfriend likes you, that's different. But in general, women in general don't like men that much.
Right. And we're kind of fortunate to have that data. And it's been provided to us by social media and online dating. And especially, I love it when Tinder says, like, here's our analytics. I'm like, yeah, give me more, man. Like, give me data, give me information. And so you start to get a very clear picture beforehand. Back when we were 13-year-old boys, it was all analog.
Yeah.
You took your shot. I got some notes, and you know, maybe you'd find a correlation. It was all speculation.
Yeah.
Well, now we have online dating, we have online data, you have polling, a lot of information is out there. And we can really, in some ways, tragically see how much, or in reality, how little women have an interest in men. And that 4.5%, it's not unreal. There's certainly the argument that online dating does not reflect the real world, which I agree with.
For sure.
But the worlds are starting to converge because younger people are almost exclusively living online. So they're starting to merge, but they certainly rhyme at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so you start seeing things where it's like, yeah, girls only do swipe right on 4.5. You have to be in the top 4.5 online, at least anyway, for women to consider you. And that doesn't mean text, date, past the swipe right stage. So the numbers that are coming out either through online dating or the internet or polling is just very telling and fascinating. And then it drastically helps men, where I'm like, look, guys, when you factor in how much of your resources, effort, and energy you are pursuing women, your finance background, you got to read through the 10K.
Sure.
You got to go through the income statement, look at the cash flow statement, do your analysis. You cannot just waste your time on dating apps, or you have to figure out exactly what to do strategically that's going to result in the highest rate of return in pursuing women, which the strategy of which is completely different from what we were told as kids before the internet. So it's sad, it's tragic, especially when you look at the data, especially for the average American Joe. But at least now we know, and so that's kind of my contribution to the world of thought.
Yeah, and then the book of numbers, you go over it, and it gets even like by the end of the book, I'm like, holy crap, how did I ever date anyone? It was by the end of the book, you just go over these statistics, and it just like, well, now there's that one, I forget, it's a TikTok clip where a guy, he swiped right 1 million times and went on 2 dates. And he was not that bad looking of a guy. I mean, pretty average. I mean, he didn't look like super relevant, but he was just an average looking guy. And it was just like, these numbers are absolutely crazy when you see some of the stuff like women on average swipe right 5% of the time, women or men, it's about 55% of the time. And obviously the argument that comes from the other side is, well, dating apps are not indicative of all people dating. They're very indicative of people who are trying to meet someone. They are. They're not completely indicative, but when we find out that 2/3 of men under the age of 30 are single and only 1/3 of women, and then we go on dating apps and see there's 6 men for every woman, that would be indicative of what we're seeing. Additionally, the part about what was the other thing I'm trying to remember here, but it was like one of these concepts where women are going on dating apps for attention. I had Corey Yee sitting on my podcast, and one of the things I mentioned was like when girls go on dating apps, and before I even said anything, she goes, yeah, I was on Tinder for a while, but I went on there to get guys to funnel into my OnlyFans.
Right.
And so guys are going on there and they're right swiping with these stunning women, and they're matching, and they're thinking that, oh, that this is what's going on here. That I'm actually matching with this stunning girl, and it's either out and out prostitution. It's they're trying to get you to go down their OnlyFans, or they're just trying to get attention in general, and they're not interested that much in meeting people and dating. And what I tell guys all the time is attractive women don't need dating apps. No. Attractive women just exist and they get attention. Why would they need a dating app? But these guys are still on there incessantly thinking like that's going to solve their problem.
Right. And I think Fresh and Fit did some foundational work kind of highlighting like, look, this the existence of dating apps and social media has accelerated or warped the dating market.
Sure.
So, and you are correct. It's online dating is not exactly reflective of the real world, especially when it comes to very good-looking women, very good-looking guys. But they since everyone is going through that, especially the younger you go, you have to know what you're dealing with. So it had, like in the day back when we were younger, the reason we've got dates probably back then is in part because there wasn't online dating. There weren't these social media. Women's perception and value of men was not so warped.
We had fewer variables.
Right.
I did have to deal with guys who were better looking than me. I just didn't have to deal with all of them.
Exactly. Globally speaking. Right.
And so that was a big difference. It was just like there was a realistic understanding. I like to say there's 3 genders. There's high status men, low status men, and women. Women sort of like, because what I found is I've had a woman fire back. She's like, what about high status women and low status women? And I was like, when I talk to women who are like financially well off, and I talk to women who are young and a bit inexperienced, their beliefs about the world tend to be similar. Like I don't see there's this huge change in what they believe. They all believe that they're a 10. You still seem to see the same things, but high status men seem to have a very different experience. I've had a lot of very positive experiences with women over my life, so that's why when I express a lot of the things, I have a ton of female friends. And when I express it, this is the same thing I heard from Justin Waller, same thing I heard from Adam Sosnick, is that, I generally have positive experiences, but whenever I talk to my clients, it's one of these things where it's like, it's incredible how they're getting broken up with for the silliest things. And women are calling crazy things like he wore a raincoat, ick. He wore a raincoat? Like, what the fuck? The ick. And these icks are coming from just like crazy deals. One of the guys, I'm probably gonna have him on the show here at some point. He worked for one of these dating apps, and he was going through the code, and he was like, there's something weird that happens to a human being when you left swipe on 6,000 people. A woman who left swipes on 6,000 people, she starts to believe she could have made these people have long-term relationships with her if she had chosen to do so. And the reality is that's not true. Not even a fraction, not even a small percentage of them would have been in a long-term relationship with this girl. But because she got to left swipe them, in her mind, she's leveled up past them.
Okay.
And so then when she goes into the real world and meets real men, she starts believing that she's better than them. And then that's when you get 80% of men deemed unattractive on social media.
Right.
Yeah. That's where the evolutionary mismatch comes from. And so I think that's where a lot of the problems come from. But the other part was the economics of it, which you go into, which literally the amount of time and effort, like mental energy and literal money that's put in there in the book of numbers. I was wondering if you could go over some of that.
Well, on average, results may vary. The average man can expect to drop $265,000, which let's inflate that up to today for today's money. We're talking $300,000 cash explicit cash expenses. That includes everything from the car that you would have not bought to impress the girls, the stupid clothes you would have got because you thought. I even threw a little bit in for education, because if there weren't girls, how much of us would be going to school for 17 freaking years?
Yeah.
A big one, the house. I don't need a McMansion in the suburb.
Yeah.
I don't need to live out in Summerlin. I can't afford it, all right? All this stuff, and then dating, and then also I factored in a percentage that are going to get divorced, the average settlement, all this other stuff. So on average, the average man is going to drop about $300,000 cash expenses.
That sounds fair. I've probably done more. If you counted because my apartment is on the Strip in Las Vegas. That's not an accident. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly.
You're exactly right all the time. Like, so I could definitely see what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then when you start factoring in opportunity costs, which becomes less of an accounting thing and more of an assumption thing, I took that money at the varying stages that you were dropping this money, whether you were a 13-year-old boy cashing in your can collection money or whatever. Up to divorce, I said, all right, if you threw this into the S&P 500, what would happen? You'd have $9.6 million by the time you were facing death. Now, of course, you'd spend some of that money, but I wanted to do a lifelong calculation as to what the opportunity costs were. And this also assumes that you would, how many times have you gone to a nightclub? And even the average guy, how much did you went to the bar? You went and you did this, you went and you did. There is real opportunity cost that you could have fixed your house, fixed your car, got an advanced degree, learned a trade, And if you prorate all that, and the conclusion should not shock anyone, because it ends up costing you your entire life. $9.6 million is just the arbitrary number we put on it. $9.6 million, that's a pretty good bet. Like, what will a man contribute to society? Shy of 10 million? Yeah, I could see that over 70, almost 8 decades. And so when you look at it from that perspective, well, yeah, men are almost driven to pursue women for that's the most important thing in your life, and then having kids, and ultimately has a cost.
It's almost like our society was set up economically knowing that men will chase women, and then creating a consumerist trap so that these men could spend money in order to chase women and other people could profit. It's almost like that was set up in a nefarious way.
Well, I don't want to, more modernly, yes.
Yes.
But I just love how feminists think they know so much with 50 years of speculation in academia.
Yeah.
When meanwhile, every culture, no matter where you were on the planet, had gotten to the point like, okay, marriage, one guy, one gal, nuclear family, and the men would work, and the women would take care of the kids and also take care of the home. It worked that way. Trial and error over whatever, 100,000 years, whatever you want to call it. But hey, in the 60s, somebody got a crazy idea. Let's like replace each other. We're universal, we're interchangeable, and that's where I would say nefarious, or certainly not the best things.
Negligent. I think initially it's negligence. I think later on it's nefarious.
Well, it could even be idealism.
Yeah.
I'd say like, oh, wouldn't it be nice? Yeah. And so what ends up happening is, think of all the people that benefit from essentially men and women breaking up the nuclear family.
Sure.
Now you need twice the housing. You need twice the cars. Women are not at home darning socks. If I have another book out called Poor Richard's Retirement, and I compare a 1950s budget to a 2023 budget of the average American family. You penny pinched. You would walk. You would take the bus. Women would, because the clothes were very expensive back in the day. We didn't outsource it to Asia, essentially. So women provided tremendous value, but you weren't selling more clothes. Now you need twice the amount of cars. Now you need, McMansions. You start to get into luxury things that are not needed anymore. I need my fancy downtown office. I think the pinnacle, and men are not innocent of this either, but I think the pinnacle is the $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 handbag for women, or the shoes, whatever.
No,
it is.
the $750,000 Himalaya, Birkin Himalaya that you have to get. You have to have a broker meet you in a hotel room to sell it to you. Yes,
right,
with authentication included.
Right. So if you look at it, and let's just view it from the women's perspective. The men we could talk about maybe a little bit later, but women at age 18 immediately sign their financial life away for a worthless degree. And I'm sorry, ladies, I did the numbers. First book I wrote was called Worthless. 90% of you major in worthless shit. It's just not going to happen.
Can you go over specifically the degree? Like, there's an ROI per degree. I have a degree where I was going to be a consultant. I have an MIS degree from University of Texas at Austin. The placement rate before the crash of 2001 or the dot-com bubble, or MCI and Enron going out of business, Before that, the placement rate was 98%. I was going to be able to pay off my degree. I went to a state school, so the ROI was high. Liberal arts degree, you go over specifically how some of these degrees, just like you're basically in debt forever.
Well, you have a very easy answer to it. It's called starting salaries. Economic data will tell you. And it's nothing that people haven't figured out by now. It's just they don't want to admit it. If it's math avoidant, hard avoidant, any kind of rigorous study, it's going to be pretty worthless. So your liberal arts, your social sciences, I would even throw economics in there, even though there's a fair amount of math that's involved in that, but it's ultimately nonprofit government type of work, and rarely do you see private sector work. Anything that avoids math is going to be pretty unemployable. You don't even have to go to college. You can graduate with high school and do most of the stuff. Yeah, business degrees, like a general business degree, horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Or, dude, a degree in entrepreneurship.
Oh, God.
Just the most mind-numbingly stupid thing I have ever, a degree in entrepreneur. I know some fantastic, I have several friends who are fantastic entrepreneurs. Several of them went to jail, like the Wes Watsons and the Ryan Stewmans. And I have found this many degrees in entrepreneurship from these phenomenal, Dan Fleischman does not have a degree in entrepreneurship. So it's really interesting that they're doing that.
Right. So the degrees that matter, a very short list, but not all-inclusive. Medical, like nursing, medical school.
Again, uses math. Engineering
and
uses
science,
math.
Uses
math, yes.
All your engineering categories. The only STEM field I would say you want to avoid would be biology, because ultimately all you could do is teach in that, or maybe become a researcher at a doctoral level.
There's some medical researchers that make a lot of money, but you could do that. I think where you could actually go off is things like theoretical physics or astronomy. Those are STEM fields where you're not going to make any money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, there's some exceptions in physics. I don't know if you know this. Because physics, one of the things you do if you get a degree in physics is you do tons of computer modeling, but you're using this for astronomical bodies. When you use that same modeling, if you know Jim Simons is the guy who runs the Medallion Fund, one of the most successful hedge fund traders of all time, his traders come from the physics world. He has a background in mathematics. He doesn't hire finance people to do finance. He hires physicists because they're really good at modeling. But for the most part, you're right. Like there are a few places in the STEM field that aren't going to help you. But like when you think about the infrastructure of this country, which is going to be engineering and architecture, that again requires mathematics.
Right. And then kind of boring things, like accounting, actuarial science. These are not statisticians. These are not fun jobs.
Yeah.
The reason people are paid more is because they're not fun and they're hard. So women, when they 18 years old, sign away at $100,000, waste 4 years of their youth learning something that's absolutely worthless, and are at least financially impaired, if not outright financially crippled, sometimes to the rest of their lives. I mean, if you looked at the student loan bailout, the number one generation between millennials, Zoomers, and all that, guess who holds the plurality of the debt?
I believe it's 68% of the debt is held by women. Is that correct?
No, I mean generation-wise.
Oh,
between
generation.
Boomers, Xers, and all that other stuff.
This current population?
No, it's the Xers.
Is the Xers
because they've let it grow and accumulate exponentially.
Oh, got it. Because of interest. Got it. I totally understand. Yeah.
They got college degrees that know how compound interest works. So women immediately, getting back to why we have this incentive to lie to women and men about what's important in life. The university systems, education industry makes a ton of money.
Incredible.
$600 billion a year alone goes to higher education.
I don't know if anyone's done a study of this. I would be willing to bet you the total revenues from all the law schools in the United States, in comparison to the total revenues of all the law practices in the United States.
That'd be an interesting comparison.
Guarantee you we're dwarfing it 10 to 1. Because I'll tell you right now, I'll give you a different example. It's kind of a weird example. If you took the revenue from all the actors in the world and then compared that to all the acting schools, the acting schools are going to 10 times there's so many starving again, of course there's the $40 million a movie guys that do that, but that's all the zeros that are in there, all the people who've never made a penny from acting, and when you think about all the tuition they pay to all the acting classes they've gone to. So I've said this before, the way to make the money is teaching someone how to become a real estate broker, a real estate agent, not actually becoming a real estate agent, teaching someone to go to law school.
The way you make money in a gold rush is sell the panning equipment.
Exactly.
You don't go dig for the gold yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. So, but and it's the same anyway. So these women are crippled or impaired until I'm pushing 50 now. All right. Certainly till their beauty and youth is gone, so their primary asset is gone. So they've enslaved themselves or indebted themselves to that. Then there's rank materialism, where I have to have my handbag, I have to do Sex in the City. If they get married, they got to go live in a suburb. They have to have a fancy SUV. And I saw this in banking all the time. The number of people out there who have luxury cars yet don't own them and are just got a sliver of equity. That's like 95% of the people that I've seen out there. Then you get divorced. They're not saving for retirement. They are not saving for retirement. And not to introduce politics into this, but then what's confused me is a lot of women, especially professional women, will then go and vote for a leftist candidate, whether it's here in the United States or overseas, you generally Democrat, Labor, whatever. And I'm not even slam, I'm just explaining, to only raise their taxes as they make more money. And so all these people, then corporations love it because you're buying twice the amount of stuff. They also love it because you're working now. That puts downward pressure on wages because now we have essentially double the labor force, which didn't happen when it came into the labor force, nowhere near the levels that men have. So you have depressed wages, higher corporate profits, people making billions a year in the education industry, rank materialism and all that. Why? Because well, you don't need a guy. You don't need family.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so now, and you're going to see it, certainly I think with my generation, there's going to be a lot of angry, upset women who are not fulfilled romantically, socially, familially, spiritually, because they abandoned what their genetic programming was forever since humans existed. And so it's a fascinating experience that we see now. However, now let's introduce the guys.
Well, real quick, just to summarize what you're saying, in front of the Macomb School of Business at UT Austin, there's a statue. It's a bronze statue of a man and a woman, a child. And basically the explanation for having it there is that the family was the primary unit of the U.S. economy.
Right.
And so what you're saying is what they've done is if we just split the man and woman apart and then we have two whole incomes, they have less children to spend money on and actually accrue more debt for, like, for instance, there's only a certain number of diapers that I can buy that's going to equal an SUV.
Right.
2 SUVs, that's a lot of fucking diapers.
That's a lot of diapers.
So having 2 independent people with their own ability to take on debt and be consumers, that's 2 for 1. And so we could grow the economy that way by not having the family unit as being the primary unit of economics.
Correct. Yeah. Now, do I think they did that consciously? I don't think so.
I don't think so either, but I definitely see where that's coming from and how that makes sense. Like having a woman make $300K a year, it just seems like, because in general, and this is true, like for women to buy the same things that men buy in some cases, like for instance, underwear. Women's underwear is 6X, 10X how much men's underwear costs, right? Like there's a few things like.
I thought you meant sizes. So okay.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like how much stuff costs. There is truth, like, and the reason why is because women will, like, there's ways of marketing to women showing like certain things in what's the one I'm looking for, triggering certain emotional responses where they're willing to buy feminine products at a higher rate.
Right,
or
the pink tax, as they call it.
Yeah, the pink tax. There's nothing that I could possibly put, there's no backpack I could put my camera in. I have a $3,500 camera. There's nothing that I could put my in that costs over $1,000.
Right.
There's no possible way for me to conceive of any sort of back or luggage. They tried to, my girlfriend tried to buy luggage. It was $5,000. They tried to sell her just the concept. I was a U.S. military officer with a duffel bag going to Iraq with a big ass duffel bag like this. This duffel bag did not cost $10 at an Army surplus place. And you want $5,000 for this luggage. And it's just like, how? No, only a rapper or a female would buy a $5,000. It's just the concept of it is so outrageous. Right. And then I just think of like the incentive to sell $5,000 bags. Huge. What would you be willing to do that? And it's like, well, break up the family. Well, that makes sense. And then that would work because no responsible family is going to buy a $5,000 bag. You
remove love from a woman's life, she'll replace it with things.
Got it. Okay, there you go.
That's how it, because, oh my God. And here's another thing. You have married people, friends, and they got kids. They don't have time, like, get my Lululemon. They're like running around making sure Jimmy doesn't puke on Jesse so Jesse doesn't get sick. And the kids take time. So you're like, hey, we gotta deal with this. And again, I don't think it was malicious, but now I think people are aware, and now I do believe it's malicious because there's so much money. And then there's also the psychological, ideological, almost religious aspect that is unfortunately become unto its own self among women, I'd say, where their value is how they don't need men, like their independence from men.
Right. That's a brag.
It's a brag.
They're bragging about to the extent with which they don't need men.
Right, but I also think I think it's starting to become an increasing percentage of women's core value. Like, no, I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need a man.
Yes.
And so you're starting to see a spiritual adherence to being not married as well.
Got it.
And then if they want kids, they can in vitro, surrogate, whatever else, stuff like that. But you're starting to see it go beyond mere consumption and economics to now spiritual purpose and meaning. We're like, I'm a vegetarian. How do you tell who the libertarian, the vegetarian, or the pilot in the room is?
They'll let you know.
They'll let you know, exactly.
So
that's So I think it has also become reality in the economy, and people are now capitalizing off of it. That now there's a financial incentive. Now, interestingly enough, with men, all economies in the past, all this thing, the electricity. You know who invented that? Men did.
Yeah.
Right. You know why he invented it?
Because they were trying to impress
We
women.
want to get laid. That's it. There's all of economics right there for you.
Yeah, if women weren't selective, we'd all be living in caves.
Right. Or if there were no women, I mean, we would still, quite literally, we'd all still be living in caves.
Please understand, I enjoy the fact that I compete with other men for women. Sometimes it sucked. I'll tell you, in junior high, it sucked. Yeah. In college, it sucked, losing to other men for women. But the fact that I did so, that got me into the gym, at the end, I got in better shape in the gym. I do understand that some of my motivation, if you were to look at it, like what is a ubiquitous motivation for Homo sapien men, it is higher sexual selection and higher status. Mm-hmm. That is the case amongst all species of men for all time, as long as there have been men. And I would guess that Australopithecus, Homo habilis, and all these other places, these other species were doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. They were also competing with other men over women. By the way, that's the reason in two gender species, the dimorphic difference between the two genders, it shows the level of competition between men for other men. Meaning, so Homo sapiens are about 15%, the males are 15% bigger than the females, and therefore you see some competition, but what you're seeing more is men are competing for resources more than battling other men. So it's only 15% bigger. Elephant bull seals are 10 times the size of the females. And because the bulls are 10 times bigger, they're all they do is kill each other for access to the females, and one male will have hundreds of females. Gorillas, they're 6 times bigger than the females because all they do is compete with each other. It's not for resources, and same thing with lions. So you'll notice the dimorphic difference between the two genders based on the level of competition.
Mm-hmm. And so this is hardwired.
Yes.
Not debatable. Not an opinion, not social conditioning. And so men, at least of the human species, we have been geared and we're like, okay, I'm going to work, gather resources, attract a woman, have kids, maybe attract some other women along the way. But and I've said it in 2 of my books now, men are the economic engines of growth. Women are the fuel. Female youth and beauty is the fuel they run on.
Right.
Not women, female youth and beauty, because we want productive value. We want reproductive capability. What has happened, again, I don't think consciously, but now very consciously, they said, all right, well, women can now go pursue careers and do whatever else, and it's fine. I'm a libertarian, make your choices, but they did abandon men as the primary thing. It was family, it was men, find a man, fall in love, that kind of thing. That has now been abandoned. And for a while, society could rely on the male sex drive to just common sense too. Like back in the day, well, yeah, why shouldn't women be able to do that? Well, yeah, I don't want to prevent her. There was some philosophy there too. But they kind of relied on the male sex drive. Well, we'll keep doing this. Then things start to fall apart about the 70s.
You're saying as things got more egalitarian, they were like, well, the male sex drive will still continue to motivate men to be productive, even though they're not receiving the same deal.
Right. Yeah. And they weren't wrong.
Yeah.
Because men kept on working. And maybe you could even argue they worked harder in some regard. Well, I got to go to college for this. I got to go do this. I got to go to trade school. I got to build a McMansion. I got to be a faster car. I got to get a Rolex, all this other stuff. But it started falling apart, I'd say, in the 70s when you just had this wave of divorce. I call it the divorce Olympics, and the boomers took gold medal. Where, not only did the boomer men just get slaughtered and blindsided by this, but my generation were like looking at, what the hell is this? And so now at least there's a little, something like, this isn't like a Jimmy Stewart movie anymore where, oh, geez, I got the girl, we're happily married. Oh, Lawrence, that is something. And then it happens to our generation again, but each time, women were becoming less and less interested in men. So do you remember the glamour and teen beat type of magazines and all that stuff? Have you ever gone back and read that stuff those girls were reading?
Yeah. What was it like?
It's like the predecessor. It's like the T100 before the T800.
So they were getting them ready.
They were getting them ready. It was the same. It was the prototype.
Yeah.
It was the beginning. It was, and then, so in the 50s or 60s, good housekeeping, how to keep a nice house. Then the whatever, Glamour or Teen Vogue was 287 ways to tell if your man's a jerk and one to tell if he's all right. And then the internet, which is what I think just put a magnifying glass over it, and now you can see it in 4K. Yeah. And now we've accelerated to the point where we're most adversarial in competing against one another, where it's an us versus them. It is very clear, generally speaking, women are not fans of men. They may not hate men outright, but they are certainly not there to make you a sandwich or even consider you a priority in their lives.
Another way to say is most women find most men unattractive.
Correct. So what has happened now is that we're coming on our third, fourth generation under this, I hate to use the word paradigm. It's very clear to young men today just how little interest women have in the average man.
Yes.
And now you are seeing men shutting down. I call it the Scooby-Doo mystery. There's all these, I think maybe it was like a year back. Do you remember like CNN and CBS, all the legacy media? I just can't figure out why men aren't working. Why is there 7 million men that aren't in the labor force? Oh my God, it's just, and then they come up with the dumbest ideas like, well, we just need more government programs to get them into school. It's like, you need thinner women who are nice with long hair and big tits. But you can't say that. You can't say, well, men have ran on this fuel this entire time. They're used to an octane level of 91 fuel, and you're feeding them octane of 37, and it's ruining the engines.
It's so crazy, the whole thing after the pandemic, how people don't want to work anymore, Aaron.
Right.
As somebody, I employ about 60 people. It's just so crazy. Man, guys, if there was a way to do it, like look at the average time it takes for you to get an Uber in Miami, New York, or LA 4 or 5 years ago, and to compared to now, it's absurd how many times you get canceled on. People don't want to work anymore. And it's because of that thing. It was like, there's the money you need, but it's like, there's enough money I can have to survive. Like there's just enough money. And then it's like, it's not a great survival, but I can have limitless porn and limitless video games for minimum wage. I can still have that. So I get to like this certain level. And then like to go above that, to get the delts and the six pack and to have the high, the nice job and like owning a sports car, it's just like owning a boat. Like there's a bunch of maintenance and other bullshit that goes along with it. What am I willing to do? I love Mastro's. I don't go there by myself often, but like I would take my girlfriend there. Like so me going to these nice restaurants, dressing the way I do, all these kind of things that I do. What is the effort, right? And whether or not I realize this consciously or unconsciously, it is because of women. And so when you take that away, like you said before, now I have no desire to even drive Uber anymore.
Right.
I can what is the least I can get by? Unemployment doesn't look so bad. I can buy McDonald's. And so you just get more people that are being pulled down by the force of average. And like you said before, and I've just noticed like this desire to work is just gone.
Well, and here's the thing. Women have taken away both the carrot and the stick. They've taken away the carrot because, I'm sorry, they're just not attractive anymore. And here, the internet, whether it reflects reality or not, doesn't matter. When you look online, I don't see the nice girls saying, no, we like men in here. If anything, you see scam gals who ended up being porn stars in the past. Like, oh my God, I baked some cookies. Yeah. Crucifix right in her ample cleavage right there. Oh yeah, I totally love Jesus. Let's make some babies. So anyway, that's all gone. If anything, men are demoralized watching what they see in media and online and all that. So the carrot is gone. Women are overweight. They're not physically attractive. I have erectile dysfunction. I guarantee you if I put a 25-year-old hottie in front of you, it's going to go away. It's not there. There's no motivation.
Yeah, having a young, hot girlfriend, I promise you, it'll cure erectile dysfunction, your addiction to porn. Like there's so many things that all of a sudden are magically cured.
Oh, it's miracle.
Your depression is gone. All of a sudden you have a higher self-esteem. You spend more time in the gym. It's just having a hot 21-year-old girlfriend. For some reason, it's just go crazy. It's like, I didn't need this pill. It was nuts. I just had a hot girlfriend. And then all of a sudden, all went away.
Mystery,
so crazy.
So there's that, but then you also take away the stick where, again, I don't want to introduce politics into it, but girls keep voting in for a welfare state. And you pay men not to work. And, remember what we were talking about? Men would be in caves if we could be?
Yeah.
Well, what do you call living in the basement, playing video games and doing whatever, Adderall or what, I don't know what young people do for drugs.
Four Loko, Adderall, and Call of Duty, man.
Pot,
Let's go.
right, exactly. So you've given them no incentive there and before the welfare state, if you didn't work, you would die. And now with both of those gone, you are paying men to simply exist, but no reason for them to excel. And so now, and this is where it goes back to economics, now you start seeing it. Male labor force participation rate is going down. Our GDP growth is half of what it used to be, because GDP growth goes like this. So when you take an average, we used to average 4.5% between 1940 and 1960. That 20-year average is down to like 2.25 now.
Sure.
So we're half. We obviously have more debt, all this other stuff. What you're seeing is the economic engines of America shutting down. You're seeing men going into a hibernative state just to survive, because you said, well, it really helps look at it from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where imagine if Maslow's hierarchy of needs ended after the second level. There was no self-esteem, there was no marriage, there was no family, there was no self-actualization, because girls just weren't interested, and they told you, well, and the government's going to pay for my food, clothing, and shelter. Boom, you're going to stay right there.
So we have a society that's at level 2 or 3.
Maybe not even 3, but because 3 would indicate you'd go to the gym and have a little bit of self-awareness. But 2 or 3 right there on that border is where most of us are sitting. And you don't get booming economies. You don't get technological advancements. This is a stagnating society when men are no longer motivated to participate and do their best.
So let's go back to the shutting down concept, because there's a few things that we need to discuss here. Number one, and this I'm just going to play devil's advocate, because I'm sure you get this question all the time, is what are these men? Because you've basically at the end of the book of Numbers, it's basically like, dude, take yourself out of this dating market, right? And you've seen certain. Chris Williamson put out a tweet the other day why 50% of men are taking themselves out of the dating market. And my question is, what should they be doing? I mean, there's the drive for sexual intercourse and sexual validation is still going to be there, right? What should they be doing instead?
Well, there's a couple things, and it depends on you. But the next book I came out was called The Menu: Life Without the Opposite Sex. Yeah. Because for some men, it's not everyone. There's no universal solution. For some men, the pursuit of women is just going to be cost prohibitive. Like, I got to do what? Like, I'm 5'6", I'm short. And yeah, I got to ask, you can get girls if you're 5'6", but it's so much more added effort and work that for an individual, you may look at that and say, you know what, I got to hit the gym and I got to make 6 figures. Well, there's a substitute good called prawn that I can do. And I think that's a huge variable in it and I remember, if I did the math, so you'd have to ask out about 8 or 9 girls to get a date. And then you'd have to go on the date with the girl. And then 1 in 3 might sleep with you. But this is after 3 days. Well, you start multiplying this up. Okay, that's fine when you're a 20-year-old man. Sure. And you got all the... And you was
fun. It was going out, even getting rejected was fun. You were out with your buddies. It was fun. I agree with you. Well, I was young. I didn't give a fuck.
With your buddies, it's fun. But then you're on the actual date with the girl, and you ain't with your buddies. And it's like listening to this boring, like, I'm going to go become a school teacher. Like, and you're just so horny you want to get... Well, that's fine if you're 20 years old making $11 an hour. Yeah. All of a sudden you're 45 and you're making $120 an hour and you're sick of that shit. Like a person would look at that and say, oh, by the way, in the cacophony of women online telling you how much they hate you and they don't like you and you better... And you have some corroborating evidence going online and getting shot down all the time. For a significant percentage of men, they're going to do the calculus, they're going to do the economics, they say, this is not worth it, and I'm checking out, all right? In which case, then there's the menu: life without the opposite sex. You can pursue things like philosophy, religion. Most are going to pursue sloth because, let's just admit it, they're lazy at the core, and they don't want to put... And they're also cowards, I'm afraid, because they're afraid of rejection. Yes. So there's that too. Another thing you can do is, which I'm not against, is overseas. It's no different.
So we were going to get into Passport Bros. Right. By the way, shout out to the Passport Bros who made a video being very mean to me the other day.
Well, I don't know what the video was, but it's not irrational. For example, we do this in economics all the time. The labor unions are getting a little uppity at the auto industry. Well, we're going to set up a plant down in Mexico. Yes. The labor unions get a little uppity in Detroit. We're going to go down to the Carolinas.
That's what Passport Bros are. It's arbitrage for... economic arbitrage, but for dating.
Right, and then we did it with China. Like, wow, we don't make our cell phones here. We make it in China, all right? And so I can appreciate, look, you get a better deal overseas. Now, there are risks involved, as there always is, and there are drawbacks to Passport Bros. But right now I'd look at it. I'm looking at the girl. I'm like, as a we're in our 40s. Put yourself in the eyes of a 23-year-old kid today, a young man. I'm looking at this, and now we have the internet that exposes it all. When we were teens, 20s, we didn't have the red pill. There was no internet to say, oh, yeah, this is hypergamy. Like, you had no clue.
We had a box that was out in the woods that somebody buried, and then it had, like, Victoria's Secret and Frederick's Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's all we had.
That's all you had.
That's all we had.
That's all you had.
And then gutter talk at the fucking locker room.
Right.
That was the red pill.
But now, and you'll appreciate this being a military pilot.
Yeah.
It's not like we put an AWAC up in the air to get we got satellites up there. Like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, we're no longer soldiers in the trenches of World War I saying, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
We got computer printout, like, okay, here's the battle plan. And I can see where a guy is, I don't have time for this. The girls are telling me to make $250,000 a year. That's the top 1% of men, especially the younger you are. I can't do this, but I still want to get married and have kids. So I could see the logical conclusion would be to go overseas. Then there's the solution, which is what I recommend, which doesn't negate either of the previous two. It's all individual. And it's the same thing that Rich Cooper concluded in his book Unplugged Alpha. Mm-hmm. It's what I've concluded in all my analysis and that. And that is you're going to die. And I don't know about you, but I'm not religious. I think this is it. There's blackness after this. There's not even me being conscious to recognize the blackness because my sentience will end. I will not be a being to recognize this anymore. Mm-hmm. That scares the piss out of me.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's going to happen.
I happen to be religious, but if I was an atheist, I could see the beauty in just like not having to worry about things anymore.
Right. Yeah. There's that too.
Yeah.
But
no pain anymore. Like that, there is some beauty in that.
Right. But then also, it's a blessing because if this is it, if this is all, we're not going up to a God in the sky and looking down and watching the human race like a football game. We're cheering people on. I want to make this count.
Sure.
So much, which is why I'm always out hiking, which is why I prefer leisure over working. You know, like if you said, hey, do you want to make $100 or do you want to go hiking? I want to go hiking, you know, as long as I got my other stuff covered. That's why I go motorcycle riding. That is the motivation I recommend for men to do because it is serving your best interests. You're capitalizing on the life that you've been given. And so you should not be doing drugs. I mean, if you want to do drugs and you're okay with it and it doesn't ruin your life, fine, okay, go ahead. But you should be doing what you want and making the best of your life. And that means getting in physical shape, not for the girls, but for extending your life, for being healthy, for not feeling like crap every morning. You should go out and make a lot of money. You should study and work and major in the hard things. Why should you study in the hard things? Because then it's going to make the rest of your life easier.
Yo, making a lot of money, not all, like the money itself isn't the benefit.
That's not the goal.
Yeah, it's not the goal of the benefit. I will tell you, like, putting a team together to solve a problem is, I believe, the apex of the male human experience. And that's what happened. And in addition, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to play quarterback for a football team or be the CEO of a company or put rockets into space. You're going to make a lot of money. But I personally believe the apex of the human experience is to have a family and to accomplish goals with other men and women, but to accomplish goals together, because that's what makes us different from other, with the exception of chimpanzees and dolphins, we're the only animals that do that.
Yeah, I mean, the single most thing I was proud of this year, or no, I'm sorry, it was last year. Last year, the single most proud thing I was about my accomplishments, I put in retaining walls.
There you go.
Because I built it, right.
Yeah.
I didn't make any money. I saved a lot of money doing it myself, but I didn't make any money. And I wouldn't say the happiest, the most satisfied with my career I had ever been was working campus security because of the team of guys I worked with. I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize how good these people were, but all of a sudden then you go work into the real world, like, oh my God, we had a great team. It was a bunch of guys and we were patrolling to make the campus safe. It was very simple. But God, I forgot what our larger point was. That you're going to die.
Yeah.
Once you got enough money, you don't really need to work all that much more. And the reason you should be making a lot of money, like engineering, accounting, whatever, is so that you don't have to worry about money anymore. And then you're free to go and live your life and do what you want.
Sure.
And then there should be some hobbies. Again, in my book called The Menu. It's like goes through every, like, dude, travel, motorcycle ride, jujitsu, anything. Now, what happens when you do this and you realize you're going to die and you work out and you go make money and you practice in jiu-jitsu and you go kayaking? What ends up happening to you as a man?
You take your focus away from women and put it onto yourself, and then the women tend to come.
You are a much higher quality man than you were. And so outside of women, my argument is you're finite, this will end. And I look at all these video game addicts who are on pot. I got a social anxiety disorder. I got to talk to my therapist again. I try to get my associate's degree, but I live at home. I'm like, why are you alive? Honestly, like what, dude? Come on. Some fat activist died a couple days ago, and her whole thing was like, I'm fat, I'm big, I'm beautiful. Well, you're dead now. This is your life? This is what you're going to do? Get off your ass and go live it before it's over. Haven't even introduced women into it. And if you do that, at minimum, you're not going to waste your life. You're going to have an enjoyable life, or at least a content life. And if you do that, that's the number one thing you can do to drastically improve your chances with women. And what happens to women sociologically, economically, philosophically, like are they going to like guys, are they going to hate guys, is it going to be the top 4%, is it going to be the top 1%? It won't matter. You will have done all you could to improve yourself to the maximum amount, enjoying a life, not wasting it, and then you go talk to the girls. Then you ask girls out. Now, let's say you ask a bunch of girls out and it still doesn't work. In my book, The Book of Numbers, the quality of women is absolutely atrocious for marriage material here. And you're a very marriage-minded man. Fine, you're this 10. You're this alpha. You've done everything you can. It might still be in your best interest to go overseas. I don't know. Maybe because you're CEO, you don't have time to F around and date.
If you're going overseas because you're legitimately looking for a life, that was not what I had an issue with. What I had an issue with were the guys who were just coping and going over there to have sex with prostitutes.
Okay.
And then saying that it was
love.
Yeah, well, it was like, no, they're like I'm a passport bro looking for a better woman who's not colluded by Western women, and then you go over there and you're just like fucking prostitutes. And to me, that's not like a passport bro. And the other thing is, this is just my only caveat. Anyone over 14% body fat should not be a passport bro. Every one of you can get below 14% body fat. Right. If you're overweight and you're becoming a passport bro, that means you haven't tried everything you can here before you do it. But I do want to ask you a question about something, which is because you did a video about, you were discussing some of the stuff that I do, and it had to do with using your work in order to meet women or whatever.
Yeah.
But there was actually a broader point there, which is the concept of using a social circle in order to meet women, or to basically create a funnel to where women are constantly being pulled into your arena with you doing very little work. And there are ways to do this. Now, one way I was sort of forced into, I couldn't find a job in 01. Enron had just gone out of business. There were no consulting jobs for any of these companies. And I ended up working at a strip club as a DJ and then later on as a manager. In this case, I would go out for girls' birthdays, and it'd be me and like 10 strippers. When I did that, I noticed a bunch of other girls started to want to meet me. There was no club I couldn't walk into, never had to pay for drinks. I got really good at talking to women. So it was one of these things where like because I could imagine a guy working at a theater, which mostly women, or a male nurse working on a floor in a hospital or a nonprofit or something like that, where you're just surrounded by women all the time. Yes. Maybe you are a busser. There's 40 cocktail servers at the place you work at and you're a busser, something like that. In those cases, what I've seen is there's guys who are basically able to put women in what's called a familiar environment as opposed to an unfamiliar environment. So there's this really important distinction in that sex researchers come up with, or people who research dating, which is the concept of long-term dating and short-term dating, and the concept of familiar environment and unfamiliar environment. Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge are an unfamiliar environment. Right. Going up to strange women, doing cold approach is an unfamiliar environment. In the unfamiliar environment, that 4% of Chads at the top, they do better in the unfamiliar environment. So a strategy might be, which is what you were referring to previously when you were talking about what I do, is to take as many women you can from an unfamiliar environment into a familiar environment. Right. At the charity event that we're hosting, or at the bikini competition, or at the comp table, or at the group birthday party that you set up for one of the girls. I love setting up, when I was single, setting up birthday parties for girls that I knew, because I knew I was going to meet 20 other women whenever I did it.
Easy, yeah.
Dude, I love being the guy who was like, when there was a bachelor party that came to Vegas, like, good, no, I'll walk you guys into excess, because I knew I was going to walk in with 10 and meet another 10. And so I'm just curious what you think about this concept of like using a social circle in order to meet women using less effort. This is kind of mind-blowing for people, because like I don't like using dating apps, and I don't recommend guys do like 60 days of straight up pick up cold approach. What I recommend is building this awesome social circle so that you create a funnel so that women are coming into your life with very little effort.
Right. Well, you could do it if you can.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah. And it's a brilliant strategy. I mean, that's how I got most of my success, because I used to do ballroom dancing instructor. And then I also
I can't even imagine. If you're a ballroom dancing instructor, you know how to talk to women. I can't even imagine, bro.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it was
that
good.
Would be crazy.
It was, dude, I'd say like, okay, so I have my dance class, right? Not to go on a tangent, but I have my dance class. And I had to separate it and distinguish it from the other competitors' dance classes. So I take them on field trips. So we go to a nightclub, a salsa club, all this other stuff. And it just so happened to be that these were like 2 miles down the street from my house. So the girl, it was good times.
Yeah, it's not an accident. My favorite nightclub in my apartment are 4 minutes away from each other. That is not an accident. Yeah.
Anyway, but yes, it's a brilliant way. And the point I was making with that video was that if it could be your job, which ballroom dancing was my part-time job, or a bartender or something like that, because you're double dipping, triple dipping, you're making money, you're meeting girls and all that. Not everyone could, how does an electrician do that? There's not a lot of women, unless you're in the trophy wife suburbs fixing up shit.
This is what I would recommend for the electrician. The electrician needs to get involved with animal rescue in his city and start organizing the animal rescue galas all throughout his city in his off time, and then he is just constantly surrounded by women with very little effort.
Right. But so it would be outside of your work. So if your career or profession, you're a lawyer, well, you don't really have that much time. All right. But yes, your extracurricular activities, nonprofits, volunteering.
You were focusing on using your job to get women.
Yes.
And my point was, my job happens to be to build social circles, which is the reason why these two things correlate. But building a social circle is the way you get women. And sometimes if you're a club promoter, then your job is to build a social circle, which then also funnels women into your life.
And I mean, simple rank, just go into like the hiking group, your familiar environment, or the ping pong league or whatever. Now, Meetup has got its drawbacks. I never really had a lot of success with it, but at least you're there under safe pretenses of, we all like bowling. Okay, cool. And then over time, and I understand and agree, the cold approach, they don't know you. But if you go bowling a couple times and you're a familiar face, you don't even have to say hi, but I recognize him. There's some tribe type of
mere exposure,
trust, and then so your chances do go up. But another thing is it takes some time to build that up. It's not immediately overnight. But it's a great strategy.
The concept, so we talked previously about sloth. So these let's just say this bottom third, which I think soon will be a bottom half of men who are just not participating in dating whatsoever. Let's consider, you said a lot of them are going to just turn to sloth, which hurts the economy, but it's not dangerous. There are studies that show that, like, in monogamous societies, you have less crime or less violence than you do in polygynous societies. This is what we're describing as a polygynous society, because there are a few guys up here at the top. I believe it was something like maybe a quarter of men are at 0 sexual partners, like they're virgins or whatever, and then the mean is 5. The median is 5. The mean is 15 sexual partners.
Interesting, yeah.
Right, because it's skewed.
Right,
and then the top 5%, I want to say, is 35 or 50 sexual partners. And the top 1%, it's 150 sexual partners. So we're going. The bottom quarter is 0, and then once we get to the median, we're at 5. Right, and then once we get to the top 5%, we're at 35, and then once we get to the top 1%, we're at 150.
It's unimodal, just like actor salary.
It is exactly like actor salary. It's a hockey stick, basically. And then the other thing is we understand is in the great book, I believe it's in Why Women Have Sex. They talk about this concept of men in the Castro. Which is a gay neighborhood in San Francisco. And the reason why they do studies on these men is because they want to see what would the male libido do completely unchecked, meaning there's no female pickiness. And these guys were averaging 300 partners a year.
A year?
A year.
One a night almost.
Bro, yes.
Wow.
Some of them were 200, 300 partners a year, bro. And it was like, when you see that, and you kind of understand that these men at the top that are unfettered, so this is your Hugh Hefners and famous actors, etc. They're going to, like, as much sex as I want with as many as I want. We're in the 100, 200, 500 range, 2,000 range. And then these men over here, this bottom, I try to say a bottom quartile. I know some guys say a bottom third. I think it's a bottom quarter. I think that eventually, if you're 18 and you're a virgin, by the time you're 29, you're going to probably have sex with someone. But this bottom quartile of men, when you realize that these guys have nothing. And so my question to you is, does it ever get actually dangerous? a guy sitting at home drinking, taking Adderall and playing video games, he isn't really dangerous. But do we ever get to a point where like there's an added level of violence once we start taking all these men and giving them no carrot or no stick?
I would normally agree with that under normal circumstances, but right now we still have a first world economy and we have a world's reserve currency where we can placate or sedate, I guess would be a better way.
Further sedation.
We could further sedate. I also think men's testosterone is going, well, I don't think it is going down.
Sure.
And these guys, they're placated, they're sedated, and they're not violent. The average doomer incel at home is not, he can't bench press his own weight. He ain't going to get in a fight. Now, that's not to say that there isn't crime or violence, but I think that's more because of socioeconomic reasons. But I think these guys are just completely demoralized. And then you also have the prawn. Definitely takes that away.
Sure.
That definitely. So I don't think that would happen. Now, the electricity goes out and there's no law and order. Time you don't get your whatever, the Ritalin or whatever you take in the daytime. Things might change then. But right now, no, I think their testosterone levels are down. They're not violent. They're your soy boys, and they're not going to rise up. I mean, you might have a crazy Elliot Rodgers type of guy. That I'd be more a little bit worried about.
That's more mental illness.
Yeah, it's more,
I think people need to separate the politics of the individual, the mental illness of the individual, and how the individual got the weapon.
Right.
These are three different things, but both sides use whichever helps them. So, for instance, if the conservatives, if they find out that this person's a pro-LGBT shooter, like the one we saw in Tennessee, then it's like they're all nuts. And then when we see Elliot Rodgers, it's like clearly these men who are frustrated women, they're all nuts. And you got to always remember 75 to 85% of this is mental illness, maybe more. Like in the case of like say Charles Whitman when he shot those 28 people on the top of the University of Texas. This was up in 1960.
The 60s, yeah, it was a while ago, yeah.
Or the situation with Oswald. I mean, this is one of these situations where I think there was a amount of mental illness that was going on there as well. We don't count that into account with what I'm saying is we try to blame violent video games. We try to blame Andrew Tate. We try to blame all these things, and what we're missing is the level of mental illness that goes into this.
Right. Now, you're safer now.
Yeah.
If you look at, I believe once the internet prawn hit, the amount of sexual assault and other related categories has dropped significantly.
Yes.
And so it's been 5-10 years since I've looked at that up. Maybe it's a little bit different now. But I do not see this turning into a tournament mating species where we're fighting each other like gorilla. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I saw these professors write this paper. It's like, why isn't there more incel violence? And I was like, why? It's so funny that's what you expect. Anyway, so let's go to this. What are the things is your background? So your college experience you mentioned before about being at parties, people being like, I can't believe that you're a Republican, or you're a libertarian.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like how and what state are we in South Dakota at this point?
Minnesota.
In Minnesota.
Minnesota, yeah.
So what is your original experience like that kind of led you down this path?
Well, how I got here was I liked economics. I was originally an economics major, but I switched to finance to have it be more practical.
Yeah.
Graduated, and I would go to house parties because that's what you did. Or you go to a nightclub. This is in the 90s. And I was pretty charismatic. I wasn't afraid of women. I had a fair amount of success even in college, especially my senior year. And so you just go talk to the girls. Well, and I could never figure out who the guy was because it's kind of the same crowd. It was all dancing and all that. Some guy would like, oh yeah, that guy's a Republican. And in Minnesota, where, if you're a Republican, of course you like the guy with the funny mustache and you hate non-white people and you're oppressing women every day. I have to like argue with these people. Like, no, I'm a libertarian, which they didn't know. And it just really impaired my ability to meet girls. So the solution I had was to print. The idea was to end the argument as quickly as possible. So I printed off CDs with charts and data that would prove, like, yeah, look, socialism doesn't work or this and that. And that didn't work because...
It gets worse.
It gets worse because, like, who brings CDs to a party?
Yeah.
Like, that kind of... You have to fire up a computer. Then the internet came. You could have blog. So I got a blog, and I just put up a bunch of charts and data where I'm like, here it is. Look it up. And then inevitably I realized house parties were stupid, so I just went dancing, and that was a little bit better. But that's what kind of sent me. That's why I'm here today, is because that blog ended up becoming a blog that I wrote for 20 years, and then I built up an audience, and then the YouTube and podcasting and bandwidth increased, and then so that's kind of how we're here today. But what it showed me here it is, economics, I'm trying to prove economics, but also I'm trying to get laid. And you cannot help but notice that there's a why am I wasting so much time, resources going here? And for most economists, they're out there, well, what does interest rates do to GDP? Or what happens to the Laffer curve? And I started realizing all these guys are here. Well, the only reason we're doing this is because we wanted to get laid.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what started giving me the insight that, no, this is all about sex and ostensibly having children and progeny in future generations. But that's where I guess my field, because I was writing economics, but then also kind of started slipping into the red pill community because of all my dating experience. And then the two kind of formed to make this really nice contact, which I think is very practical, given how much time and effort men are putting into the pursuit of the opposite sex. So that's kind of how house parties in Minneapolis led to where we are today.
My favorite book that you wrote is The Curse of the High IQ. This is where I started reading the stuff about men being inside of one standard deviation, women being outside of one standard deviation, as far as like the average IQ between 115.
The flatter curve.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just curious, like what could you summarize some of the stuff that you talked about in that book? Is that when you're a person, I actually attribute it to more than high IQ, because being in the military and being around extremely accountable people who are always on time, and then comparing that to working in a strip club or living in Las Vegas later, and just seeing it wasn't just IQ, it was ability to delay gratification, a level of discipline, and a level of curiosity. Those people, dealing with those people and realizing most people aren't like that, that seemed to be something difficult that I had to transition when I got
right. No, I mean, intelligence is not going to be the only thing you will be alienated from the rest of society. Like punctuality for me.
Yes.
Oh, God, don't start with me about people being late. Just, you don't want me to be president because there won't be any people who are late because there won't be any people.
Yeah.
So, yes, but the main thesis of that book is you're an aberration. You're not bad, not good. It's just you're a statistical aberration, and that all systems have to hover around the mean. Society has to be geared around the mean. Infrastructure, computers, all that has to be geared around the mean. And with things for society to function being geared around the mean, your average person, that means people who are over here and people who are over here are going to have a harder time interacting, navigating, succeeding, or just achieving contentment. And so but the problem is when you see someone who's mentally ill, or not mentally ill, mentally impaired, so alcohol, fetal syndrome, Down syndrome, or just, there's something not right with that guy.
We're talking in general below an 85 IQ, so outside of 170, below 70 maybe.
Well, it depends. I mean, you could have people who can't wipe their own ass. Yeah. I mean, and then there's Down syndrome where they can actually do a kind of a low-skill job. Sure. So I'm just saying, you could say, that person is mentally disabled. Mm-hmm. We should make accommodations for that person.
For sure.
No one gives a shit about the smart people.
Got it. Okay, now I see what you're saying. Yes. You're smart people are a privileged class. Dumb people are a protected class.
Right, and I've never wanted to punch people in the face. There's a couple sayings. Must be nice. We can't all be like you. And the one that tops them all, you'll land on your feet. Why? Because I did really well on my SATs. I still need to eat. I still came from a poor family. It's just like, we don't have to worry about these people. And so there's certainly that, I guess you could consider it social handicap. But then there's also just the intellectual problems the people who are above average intelligence face. Finding someone to date. Men with high IQs, because of that flatter distribution, there are both more dumb men than women and more smart men than women.
Yes.
And that's why you have more homeless that are men, but you have more physics PhDs that are men. If you are a 130, 145, 2 to 3 standard deviation, like a physicist would be, or a surgeon, good luck finding a girl. It depends on how far down the bell curve you want to go. But for every one of these very intelligent women that you might be able to get along with on an intellectual level, there's like 3 to 5 guys that are pining for her. The one okay-looking girl in the engineering class who's from Asia, there's 10 guys chasing after her, offering to help her with her homework. And so there's these inefficiencies that intelligent people face, among other things as well. That's kind of what the book is about. And I think the main thing about the book was to identify it, because you're shamed, which is okay. You should not brag. You should not. You should be humble. You should at least be quiet. You don't want like, oh, I'm really intelligent. I'm really strong. But that doesn't change the fact that you are really intelligent. And so what smart people are thought you're like, well, you shouldn't brag about being intelligent. Like, no, it's not that you should be proud of it, but you should recognize it and realize that there are disadvantages to being highly intelligent in a population of an IQ of 100.
Yeah, what was the Elon Musk put out that tweet? It was like you have a greater chance of being a virgin with an IQ over 115 than you do with an IQ below 85 or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, probably because there's more people within that range. But yeah, so there's a lot of things. And then me personally, I mean, it was like, I treated it with alcohol, and it was a great treatment. I like just lowered that IQ down, and I relaxed. And now that I'm sober, I'm like, man, you suffer the stupidity of 4K and Bose surround sound. Like, just people just they walk out of the Walmart or whatever, and then they just stop right in the middle of the door where you can't just like that. Yeah, so that kind of stuff. And I just want to say you're not alone. There's other of us out here, but there's not much you can do about it, but to identify the problems.
It's pretty great. And then the other book, Enjoy the Decline. The decline is it the decline that you're talking about now where it comes to the economic engine that men are were being fueled by, it being going away? What decline are you referring to?
Just the general social and economic decline of the U.S. That was written when Obama got reelected. So 2012, if I remember my history right. Yeah, I guess it is a 10-year-old book. Because it became apparent to me that America was not going to be one of independence, strength, American exceptionalism, and a life of it. It was, no, we're going to be mediocre. We're going to be more of a egalitarian, communal type of society. And it was like, okay, well, these things are going to decay. We're all going to decay as quality and caliber of human beings. Our economic production and growth is going to decay. And it's just going to be a less enjoyable society. We're going to have less excellence. And everything's pretty much been proven true in the past 10 years. Our movies have gone to pot. Our culture have gone to pot. We've gotten fatter. We've done the opposite of Daft Punk. Harder, better, faster, stronger. Yeah. We've been softer, slower, dumber, fatter, or whatever the heck the opposite would be. So that's what that was, where if you are a person who was American in philosophy, you wanted to do the best and win the games and take the championship home and grab the girl, the rest of society is not going to be playing by those rules going forward. And so that was just how to cope with that kind of, and ultimately I would say economic collapse of the U.S. economy. You
had two books, A World Without Men and The Menu, which is Life Without the Opposite Sex.
Are those
both, yeah. And both of these books were having to do with obviously not having the opposite sex around. Was there any like realizations that you came to from that? The World Without Men was what world?
The World Without Men, so the U.S. Department of Labor, there was not a sexy reason for this book.
Yeah.
The World Without Men was, I saw some data series from the Department of Labor that broke down men and women and what they did in our economy to quite a granular level. And I think they had taken it down, then they put it back up. I'm like, oh, they don't want people to know. So I downloaded the data set and I got it. I say, before the Department of Labor takes this down, I want to show what men and women are doing in this economy.
Yeah.
And so I just backed out all the men from the data. And I said, okay, here's what your economy would look like with women. And the thing that I saw that shocked me or was that I discovered along the journey of writing it, it's worse than what I thought. I thought, okay, there's some women who are going to plumb. There's some women out there. There's some, but it's a fraction of what I thought it was. And I didn't realize like just how screwed women would be without men. And I'm not like a plumber. I'm not important. I'm a podcasting idiot. All right. I am not vital to this economy or society. But man, this idea, I've conclusively debunked that women don't need men. They are so dependent on men. It's not even a joke. And then you look at other things like what percent of worthless jobs, like make work government jobs or nonprofit, stuff that has no real economic value. Women, I think they outnumber men 2 to 1 in those fields, because men still work in these fields. But I think those were kind of the thing I learned along the way. The Menu, there I had to do more of a deep dive into finding purpose and reason in life beyond what I found purpose and reason in life. So I'm, hiking, sex, adventure, exercise, that kind of thing. Whereas other people, there's other things like particularly how if you're not religious, there is philosophy. I found philosophy, especially Stoicism, very soothing.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, religion's great. I mean, if you could get religion, do it because it's great. You got rules. Here's your purpose and meaning. You're going to live forever, and you have a community usually associated with it. And it's very soothing to think there's another being out there that cares about you or actually took the time to create you. So if you can find it, do it. But for the secularists, for the atheists out there, the agnostics, well, what if you don't believe in the guy in the sky? Well, the Stoics, or not the Stoics, the philosophers of times past had these same questions, and there's a tremendous amount of wisdom and experience that you could find in different philosophies. And it really helps, even since writing that book, I've implemented several things that made my life much more enjoyable, not as angry, and a little bit more hopeful. And so that was kind of Epicureanism, which it's basically responsible hedonism. Like do the drugs, but don't do it until you die. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of, but it's a little more scripted and fleshed out than that. But those are kind of the things I found in those books.
When it comes to the dating market, I do see a decline coming. I see it as inevitable. I don't think porn is going to get worse or less pervasive. I don't think, and in fact, Ray Kurzweil talks about like men having sex with robots in the future and not needing women at all. I do see a decline coming, but in the interim, myself and at least probably my children's generation, I think would have an easier time getting in that top 10 or 20% of men than at any point in history.
Yes.
Meaning like it requires exceptionalism to get in the top 10%, but probably the least amount of exceptionalism that you've ever had. I'm just in shape and I don't listen to Disney. I read more than 5 books a year. You understand what I'm saying? I'm below 14% body fat. I make over $100,000 a year and I have masculine boundaries when it comes to my dating life. I think you're already in the top 10%. So I see it both ways. From a socioeconomic standpoint, I do see a decline when it comes to dating. 6 in 1,000 women want to get married, a decline in the birth rate, 56% divorce rate, et cetera. Those things increasing. The bottom quartile of men having no sexual options, I believe that's going to grow to a third and then maybe a half. I think that's where we're headed in that direction. But at the same time, I do think that if you're just one of those people who's willing to unplug from, the matrix, and I don't mean the matrix in the way that like everybody in the red pill is saying, but like unplug from this traditional way of thinking or the way of thinking that's being taught to you by major media outlets and big tech, et cetera. I just think if you just don't listen to them, you can put yourself in the top 20%.
Right, but here's my question: are women's standards objective or subjective?
Well, they're subjective. So women's standards would be subjective, but the thing is, I think because as men we have this ability to make them laugh, and then they want to sleep with us, whereas they can't do the same with us, because we have, like, for instance. For women on offense, it's just they're throwing it up to Calvin Johnson every time, and he's just catching touchdowns. But for us, we've got 5 receivers, backs and receivers we can get the ball to. They're just not as good as Calvin Johnson. Meaning, like, we have several different ways to score. We can good looking and tall and rich, but we can also be super funny, have incredible social alignments, and show pre-selection. So we have way more plays that we can run, whereas girl is just the fucking touchdown play. I'm really hot, and so because of that, I think whereas their standards may be subjective, their standards can be, I don't want to say manipulated, but taking them into a familiar environment. There's just so many ways that
tactics and strategies.
There's so many more tactics and strategies that men have than women have. And if they can figure out which one works for them, again, the short, fat dude who is really great with a guitar and becomes a famous guitar player, like Jelly Roll, like, you know what I'm saying? He's fucking hot girl. That dude up in Tennessee, or Florida, whatever. He's fucking all these hot girls, face covered in tattoos. He's overweight. You can overcome. With men, there's ways to overcome almost anything.
Right.
But for women, maybe not so much.
Right. But I think with the kind of the general advice there of, because it's been around, like you see, like, okay, what does it take to be a top 10% Zoomer male? Well, not living at home, not being fat, you're in the top 35%.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't think that's going to be enough. You can't just be not fat, you got a job, and you don't live at home. That's still, like, I have objective standards of women where I'm like, there's got to be a personality, but you have to meet these. I don't care what the other women are doing. I can't get it up for you just because you're the top 20%, but the rest of the 75 is so bad that makes you the top 25%. So I wouldn't just like, go for a walk and don't get too fat and have a job. No, dude, you guys. Well, here's another thing about efficiency. it's called Bizarro World, or Where the Laws of Physics Switch. I even did a video called Don't Go to College, Go to the Gym if you want to get girls. Look, if you go and become a top 5% guy, you don't have to deal with half this shit.
Yeah.
You still have to be charming and charismatic. Yes, it's certainly every advantage to the, learn to dance, become a guitar player, going into environments. Those should all be there. But if you can just get below 14% body fat, work out, dress nice, which I'm not a big fan of, but all that. Put in the extra effort to become a top 5% guy. The women will do the work for you.
Yes.
And you save way more time than you spend at the gym or dieting or whatever. And dieting doesn't take time. It's just not eating what you want. So I would, yes, it doesn't take that much today to become a top 20%. I don't think the top 20% zillennial is still going to attract a woman.
I see what you're saying. They still
yeah.
have to do certain things that are exceptional.
Right.
I agree with you. I just think if you can, one of the things that you can do is that exceptional is have really good social alignments. Mm-hmm. Like it's very beneficial. For me, if a girl comes into town and I'm like, "Who's your favorite DJ?" and she's like, "Oh yeah, I love Tiesto." I was like, "All right, I'll take you on stage," and it's just like effortless. The date just goes real well, Aaron. Like it's just like it's a real easy date.
I bet you she doesn't flake out at the last minute.
She shows up on time. She's very excited to hang out, and I'm the first person she calls whenever she comes back to Vegas. So you have a statement: why all men must accept the reality of women. A lot of times when I talk to guys, when I meet them, there's a deserve. This actually goes back to the IQ thing. I have a lot of clients. And these clients have super high IQs. They're engineers, doctors, whatever. And they believe, and they see the guys who are doing well with women, and they're usually dumber than the guys we're talking about, my clients. Right. And in their mind, they're like, because of my intellect, I deserve. Can't you see I'm better than this dumb idiot that you're with?
Secret kings type of thing.
And they're frustrated because their intellect isn't buying them sex like they thought that it should. Right. Mm-hmm. And then they get into a separate trap, which is their intellect does get them money. And then they use money to get sex, which is another trap. Right. It's a separate trap. And so I think what's happened is they don't understand the reality of women. Like you don't deserve, there's not a punch card thing you get. And at the end you get sex.
Yeah. Like fuel rations.
Yeah.
Or something
fuel rations for sex.
Yeah.
I've done enough good things for you. Look at how many times I took out the trash. Now it's time, punch card. Now it's time for the sex. Right. It doesn't work like that. Right. So the thing is the reality of women, understanding, like, say, attraction is not a choice. In general, it's so funny. Have you ever used any AI chatbots to try to talk about like red pill stuff? And they do not accept your narrative.
Really?
It's so crazy. So we tried to use an AI chatbot for Men of Action, and it was just crazy. Like the stuff they were saying, it was like, I would never say this shit. Like, what is this fucking nonsense that they're talking about? Like, for instance, I can give an example. You know as well as I do that women will say, I like a man to do X, but what they mean is, I like a man who I'm attracted to do X. Yeah. But they don't say that. So if I were to say, do women sometimes say they're attracted to certain things and they're actually show that they're attracted to other things? The answer would be yes. Try to get ChatGPT to say that. Watch what happens.
Okay.
Because what you're doing is like you're basically holding women accountable, so you can't do that. So going back to what you said before is like, and by the way, that's not offensive what I said. Most women will admit that what I'm saying there is true. Why all men must accept the reality of women. Can you go into that?
You must accept reality in all instances. Girls who major in dumb crap end up being poor and financially destitute. It's a fact. You have to go to the gym to become physically attractive for a girl to want to have sex with you. That's a fact. I have to stop eating good steak and tasty bacon because I'll get a heart attack. My cholesterol I don't like that fact, but I know I got to do it. And whether I do it or not is another issue. The best thing anyone could do in any regard is to accurately diagnose what reality is, because then you can actually build a plan and a strategy to succeed in that. You need to get out of poverty. Don't have kids you can't afford. Don't major in dumb stuff. Spend less than you make. Save your money. It's boring. You don't want to hear it, but that's how you do it. And so men have to realize, look, that's great. You've ended majoring and becoming a surgeon. That's great. It is going to help you. That's better than not being a surgeon, right? But you still need to be physically attractive to the opposite sex. And that's step one. And this is where I get, like, you'll go to med school for whatever it is, 13 years. I don't know how long you go. You go to med school a long time. You graduate when you're 73. You practice for 2 years. I don't know how it works. But you won't go to the gym? You won't set down the food. You put all this effort into it, and if that's the case, then go pay for it, which I'm not against. I'm not against.
You know, this reminds me of, I had Corey Yee on, and she was like, I'll talk to girls, and they'll go out to clubs, and they'll fuck dudes for money, and they come to me, and they're like, I would never have an OnlyFans. And she's like, you'll fuck guys for money, but you won't have an OnlyFans? You'll make more money on OnlyFans.
And
like,
safer, too.
It's safer. It's like, I'm not a proponent of OnlyFans, but in comparison to fucking strange men for money, I think I would be, yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, so look, and I'm in the current day that we're having this conversation about the sexes, I think women are the ones deserving of most of the criticism, constructive criticism, but they're the ones that are in error and screwing up way more. However, men have got to realize that bullshit your teachers and your mom taught you about, well, just be a nice guy and work really hard and go to college. That doesn't work. And you could get upset that whatever, the football player went home with the prom queen or the frat boys. You need to look at what women are doing and what they're responding to and who they're sleeping at and realize that's what they want.
Yeah.
Like, you ever hear of Blippi? You know Blippi? Okay, so I thought you would have heard. He's like a local celebrity here. Well, he's a national celebrity. He is he's a guy probably just like you and me. And for whatever reason, he became the sensation among little kids. He dresses up like a plumber in orange and blue, big glasses, and he teaches them kids, kind of like Mr. Rogers of today, all right? My nieces love Blippi. Uncle Aaron, are you going to Vegas? Yes, I'm going. Are you going to see Blippi? I'm like, well, I don't really know the guy. I mean, he's somewhere in Vegas, I'm sure. I wouldn't recognize him because he's not on. And I watched Blippi with my little nieces. I'm like, what the hell do they see in this guy? Well, I'm wrong, and what's got to be 20 million little 10 and youngers are right, because this guy sells out he'll go and tour, and he sells out.
Of course.
And why do they like Blippi? I don't know, but they like Blippi.
Yeah.
Why does the girl you want to bang want to sleep with the moronic douchebag MBA, 102 IQ? I don't know, but they do. So figure out what that guy, and usually 9 out of 10 times, he's taller, better looking, and stronger than you. And that's usually, and he's probably also a little bit of a douche. He's not pining. Like the guys you're talking about, usually they've achieved everything else in life, so the one missing key that fires up the machine would be a woman. So they're like, oh my God, I'm like, dude, no, that guy, they can hang out with him and know he ain't going to stalk them.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of, like, there's no pressure. So I think that's what these guys got to realize. Little kids like Blippi, girls like party dude frat boys, at least for a while, and that's where you got to go. That's what you have to deliver to them.
Do you ever look at it from the lens of evolution, like women doing the things that they do because in a ancestral environment, had they not chosen the right man or monkey branch to a better man, then they and their child would die.
Right.
And if their mate was killed, because men were often in every society more replaceable than women, they needed to pick another mate. So their ability to get over a breakup or move on to a new mate would be easier. But from our standpoint in a modern society, that's very cruel, right? She just replaced us. She just found someone better than us. But I try to look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. So when you talk about the blame, it's like one of these things where it's like, I think it's easier to not hate people when you understand like how their genetics, play a part in it.
Well, it's very simple. I don't think it's anything complicated at all. Bigger, stronger men could protect you more.
Yeah.
Full stop. Before the Industrial Revolution, that's what you want. The guy could farm more. The guy could hunt more. The guy could fight off invaders more. And fine, post-Industrial Revolution, yes, the surgeon makes more, computer programmer makes more. That doesn't undo the 800 years of evolution that came before that. So I don't know. I like girls with big tits and long hair. You can't force me to like the pixie cut and little mosquito bites. It's not malicious. I don't hate girls with short hair. And
we don't hate you guys. We don't hate you.
I just like you put a redhead with tig old bitties in front of me. I'm like, I'm going with the redhead. So it's genetic. You got it, but that's the reality. You have to play to that.
Yeah.
So,
one of the stories you were talking about is it's really interesting when you refer to some of the stories that people write into you. One of them, a guy talking about a girl he's dating, but he's never met her.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I'm just curious if you have any other stories like that, just where people are, there's just such an just amazing mismatch where there, or rather a large lack of calibration. Is that something you see often?
I'm seeing it. I think I've only seen one other client like that, where that client you're referring to, his girlfriend was overseas. Another guy, his girlfriend was across the country. And I'm an idiot. I'm like, oh, where'd you meet? Oh, well, we met on the internet. I'm like, no, but have you met up? No, we haven't. But it's only been 2 instances of that. The only other thing that I could say that would provide some insight into the future is a friend of mine. She had a daughter who graduated. I've known her since a little 3-year-old poop. And so now she's a nice young lady, graduated from high school, and she's going on to college. And I was asking, I'm like, well, because they were going to like prom or one of the big things. I said, oh, you got a date? Like, oh, no one's bringing a date. I'm like, well, what's with the prom? Well, no, you don't bring a date to prom. Well, why not? Well, the boys want to ask us. I'm like, what? And so what transpires to this conversation I had with her, I'm like, so how do people date? Well, they date online. I'm like, at school? And they're like, well, yeah, but you could date other people at different schools online. I'm like, but you don't meet up? No. Like, don't people go to no, we don't go to the movies. And then she's like, well, it's not uncommon that 2 people in the same school will be dating. And I was like, okay, so then they meet. No, they'll walk right past each other because they're afraid to meet each other in person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the coming of the 4 apocalypse horsemen or whatever the heck Revelations was talking about. But if that's where the barometer, that's where the data is pointing, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so screwed. Because they're not even going, remember, the internet may not represent the real world today, but it's going to in the future.
Yeah,
it's going to be in the future. And so that's what I'm fearing, where you have, it's not parasocial relationships, but it's a digital only. It's not a real relationship, but it's digital, which I think, unfortunately, there's going to be a market for it. Men are too afraid to go and actually talk to
There is a market. It's OnlyFans. They never meet those girls. Right. Yeah, and they think that they're in a relationship. I have messages right now from this dude who's mental illness who thinks that he was dating Corey Yee, and they've never met. It was just the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And he's like, I've been fooled. I'm like, no one fooled you, dude. Like, you're out of your mind. Like, but it's just a lack of grasp of reality, which is a reason why it's a total different caveat. I think men should have enough exposure being around women and hearing. I think every dude should have a female friend who's a huge slut who just tells the truth, who shows you all the text messages, lets you see her fucking messaging 7 dudes at the same time, sending nudes, and half of them think she's a virgin. I think every guy should have a huge slut friend who just fucking lays it all out for you. And like, you're not sleeping with her, but she just tells you everything. I happen to have like hundreds of slut friends who've done the same thing with me. And that's why in my mind, it's like, I can tell, it's not that I don't think all women are bad. It's just when they are not bad, but when women are lying, I can just kind of see, it's like, this is not, your actions are not indicative of what your words are telling me. The genesis of Asshole Consulting.
That was banking.
Okay.
All banking. My very first book was called Behind the Housing Crash. Worthless was second. I was the guy trying to stop banks from lending to bad real estate deals. And the amount of hell and guff I caught from bosses, bankers, VPs, all that other stuff we do. What are they called? Syndicated loans, where there'd be other banks involved because the loan amount was so much you'd have to have other banks pool in money. And I was looking at the numbers. I'm like, this is not working. Why are we approving? People wouldn't have their tax returns for 2 years because they had them on extension or whatever. I'm like, why are we approving this guy's loan? I don't know the personal guarantor. So what ended up happening is the housing bubble collapsed. I was right. And all my life, I remember I was like 30. And all my life I was doing what I was told. Older people knew better. You should obey your supervisors. And then I realized, like, this is all bullshit. Everything, not only in banking and work and all that, but dating, everything was a lie. It was all a lie. And that's why I kind of, when Mad Max went rogue and couldn't tolerate the sitting in meetings and placating people when the data was the complete opposite. And so in addition to financial consulting, but because you start seeing everyone's lying about this bullshit. No one's telling the truth. Am I the only one that sees the emperor has no clothes? So I came up with this idea of asshole consulting because by this time I had a YouTube channel. I'm sorry. By this time my blog was established. I did have a podcast. I did have a YouTube channel, but it wasn't anything fancy. I was like, people were also emailing me because of all my finance books. They had a lot of questions. I didn't have time to answer them anymore. So I'm like, I will charge money for this. They'll politely tell them to go away. It would be a Japanese refusal. If people do pay me, I could curse and swear and be myself and give the finger to everyone in the world.
Yeah.
And it took off like a shot because I think other people were sick and tired of being lied to by a previous generation. And so what started as kind of like beer money. I remember I had the idea. I was driving across Kansas late one night, heading back to the Twin Cities. I was like, what if I had a consulting thing where I could yell and curse and be myself, but it would be a polite way to tell people I can't answer their questions anymore. And so that's how it kind of was born. And then we're coming up 10 years. March will be 10 years. And it just kind of grew because I think every generation, we're not telling people the truth anymore.
Yeah.
And these young people, male or female, how do I get the girls? Why can't I find a job? You go to the old guard, well, you're just not working tomorrow. You need an MBA. And I come in, I'm like, you know Josh Fluke? No. All right, he's kind of does it. He's a millennial, and he does a great job exposing just what bullshit corporate America is and how it's not fair to, like, you just shouldn't even bother. It's kind of the same thing here, but more of a Dear Abby, whatever the topic is. There is no one willing to tell people the truth, whether that's a therapist, guidance counselor. They don't. And I just classic, why can't I find a girl? Send me some pictures. You're fat, you dumbass. And I say, you're fat, you dumbass. Why the fuck do you think you can't find the girls?
Yeah.
You got to waste your time and my time here? Don't even bother chasing girls until you lose the weight. So that kind of truth there was a huge market for it. And it was a breath of fresh air, and people will pay for it.
Does Asshole Consulting have modules, or is it just one-on-one coaching? How does it work?
You send in a request. I give you two options. You can have an email response, or I do a video response online through my YouTube channel.
Okay, so it's not,
right.
Got it, okay.
Right, and most people want to have, because it has really taken like a Dear Abby, but Dear Abby was in the newspapers.
Yeah.
Now for this generation, it's on YouTube. So people tune in, because they may not.
So your responses are public?
Most of my responses are public.
Ah, okay,
yep.
Cool.
And so, and I anonymize it. I don't want to identify anybody. But that's how most of it is. Then I do one-on-ones, but I hate them because I got to talk to people. And a lot of times they're not intellectually honest.
I just make myself start yelling, and that usually gets me through.
Yeah?
Yeah, I give them a lot of fucking homework. There's a lot of screaming. And I usually say something to the effect of, have you looked in the mirror? If you went to prison, you're the first guy getting butt fucked.
Yeah.
Like I say that to them to their face, and they're just like, what? And then all of a sudden the call is very interesting to me. Yeah. Like all of a sudden I very much enjoy coaching. It's a lot of slap the table and let's fucking go. And there's a guy, let's fucking go. I'm like, bro, what is wrong? Wake the fuck. I'll have girls in my apartment. I'll be like, come over here and watch this. Come here, watch this. Do it again in front of her right now. Wake the fuck up. And you do that. And all of a sudden this call, which I agree with you, because I have 800 clients now. Like when they do stuff and I'm like losing, I can feel them draining my energy. They're just like an energy vampire. I just turn the whole thing around and I turn into Ray Lewis. Mm-hmm. I just start screaming and getting.
That's what they need. They didn't have a dad that did it.
Yes.
They didn't have a coach that did it. And that's exactly what I've had it where I've literally gotten them to the point like, seriously, why are you alive? And I can't say the S word. Yeah, I can never recommend it, but I'm always like, seriously, what are you doing here? Like, if you're so miserable, I mean, you got 60 more years of this shit based on your life expectancy. So do you want to go through with that? And then they come back like, thanks, man. People need the shit kicked out of them.
Yeah,
they do, and so but I hate doing it one-on-one.
During the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, the late 1890s, and the Wild West, the world kicked the shit out of people. You didn't need a motivational coach. You just needed to eat. Mm-hmm. You needed a reason to eat.
You needed no welfare state.
Yes. You needed something to kill in order to eat, in order to live. One thing I thought was interesting when you talk about depression, people were happier during the rebuilding stage after World War II in Germany than they were once the Germany had been rebuilt. And you talk about having a goal and a purpose and not having that causing depression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tried to figure out how to overcome laziness because ultimately at the core of all my clients' problems, 99% of it is you're lazy, you don't want to do the work. That's it. And whether it's getting a job or finding, I'm sad, I'm depressed, and I look at them, I say, yeah, if I lived at home and didn't have a job and only had pot to do and I was fat, I'd be depressed too. It's normal. You're not doing anything. Get up and do something. But on the opposite side of that, is laziness, and laziness was a survival mechanism. The reason we're all innately lazy because we didn't have food all over the place. You had to conserve your energy. So I don't even necessarily fault people for being lazy because it's how you survive for so long in the past. But now it's like that is assessing reality. That's not the case anymore. You got to get up. So you need a philosophical reason to get up that's more powerful than your laziness keeping you down. And not only do I point out, like, you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life like this, and the pain will end when you get off your ass. I say you get to do something. Like the one thing you have to do is self-supportation. It will give you something to do. Yes, it's going to suck. Yes, it's going to hurt. But by the end of the day, you're going to be and feel better off than you are now, and you're basically navel-gazing, feeling sorry for yourself. And so I pointed that out as here are the Germans. Obliterated. Like, you get to pick up rubble. I don't know how long, but they had years of picking up rubble. And then they slowly built this. And then also, once I got on easy mode, then they're all depressed because they didn't have something to do. Do you remember the Family Guy episode where Wile E. Coyote actually catches the Roadrunner?
No, that sounds great.
God, watch it because Wile E. Coyote, he finally catches the Roadrunner, breaks his neck, and then his other friend, another coyote comes up. Oh, geez, Sam. No, Wiley, what are you going to do now? He's like, I don't know. I've never been here before. This is great. So that just shows him slowly decaying where he's like watching TV and then drinking and he's got a prostitute coyote or all that. It just goes to, and I think he ends up hanging himself. It's like you need something to do before you commit to a life of this absolute miserable hellhole you're in now. Could you just try and get a job and pay rent and see what happens? And so using post-war Germany as an example is like they were happy they did the polling. And then about 90s Helmut Kohl era, yeah, they're all sad and depressed. It's like, well, maybe go, I don't know, rebuild another country. Don't invade another one. You've done that twice, but maybe, I don't know, find some purpose. But getting back to the original point, it was, well, if you had women that loved you and you had kids, you'd have something to do. But that's off the table now.
One thing I really appreciate, so because I coach mostly men, there are some women that are involved in my program, but they're not paid clients. They're just people that jump on our calls. Because I coach mostly men, one of the things that I notice is that there's no safety net for men. So like, for instance, if they keep getting fatter, women stop sleeping with them and the world gives them a very real dose of reality. If they don't make enough money, they can't afford certain things, and the world gives, unless they're living in their mom's basement or on their welfare. Right. What I'm saying is, we call this in the U.S. military self-critiquing. So, for instance, if you go land the plane and you forget to put the gear down, it's self-critiquing. You can only do it once, and then you never make that mistake again, right?
Right.
Certain things are like when I leave the apartment without my keys or my glasses, as soon as I walk out, I'm like, oh, okay, now I realize self-critiquing. For men, most of our mistakes and our shortcomings are self-critiquing. If we do this thing, we go up and try to steal a guy's girlfriend and he's bigger than us, then he beats the shit out of us. Like these kind of things. For women, there seems to be the safety net that they have because of their physical attractiveness, and even past their level of physical attractiveness, there's still a good number of men that will sleep with them. Mm-hmm. There's a safety net for them. And because of that, and in addition to the emotionality, you talk about telling women anything constructive and how it just doesn't seem to work when you tell them something constructive as opposed to men. And I don't think it's because men are smarter than women. I think it is seriously because when we do things wrong, there's a punishment for us. The world is constantly telling us no. And so you've found this, because again, I have most of my friends right now are female. And when I talk to them about things, I'm like, hey, so here's what's going to happen with you and this guy. You're going to tell me you're not going to fuck this dude again. You're going to get drunk around Thursday, Friday. You're going to text him. He's going to fuck you. You're going to feel terrible about it. You're going to hit me up. I'm not going to judge you, but then you're going to go back and you're going to have sex with him again. So even though I'm going to tell you everything's wrong with this dude, you're going to go fuck him anyway. So, there's really no point. Have you found a similar experience?
That's why I don't consult women generally. They have to be, they're pretty desperate and destitute. I don't mean in a bad way. They've hit rock bottom and when they're coming to me. And some women are sincere about it. But I have found that most of my efforts to constructively criticize women, like just simply getting my book Worthless is over 12 years old. The women of today would not have their financial troubles if they read that book and did what was in the book, not majoring in dumb stuff. I have found women are just impervious to constructive criticism unless they are in true state of crisis. And it's the Bill Burr quote, women are surrounded by this tornado of misinformation and nobody corrects them because we all want to fuck them.
Yeah.
And that there's always a Captain Save-A-Ho. Men are always shielding women from reality, even if it is the consequences of their own mistakes. And so you can't beat that. And what it inevitably, I don't know, you ever hear of the perfect mental state?
No.
Okay, I had to come up with this concept as to why you can't get a girl to major in engineering, why you can't get a girl to hit the gym and slim down to find the guy. And what I realized is that women's primary goal is to maintain this thing what I call the perfect mental state. It is more important that they have this perfect mental state where there's nothing wrong and there's no obligation, and there's no responsibility, there's no liability, there's no chore, there is no pain, than it is to actually be successful and have progress in the real world. And so I liken it, I have like a goal dream. The goal of every woman is to get Ryan Gosling. The dream is to do it without any effort. Like, he just shows up and likes her, you know?
Did you hear that one girl talking to Mac and Murphy saying Ryan Gosling was average?
Yeah.
Like, even Ryan Gosling's not enough. Just so I want to point out. Anyway,
so because there's always they've never had death consequent, because a guy will usually come in and okay, well, you didn't change your oil, the car broke down, I'll pick you up and drive you. So, but when you try to say, look, if you do these things, you will have progress in the real world, because those things require work, sacrifice, or ultimately changing the real world perception forever. Like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. Like, I have to change oil every 5,000 miles. Oh, they will immediately go back to the perfect mental state and simply ignore it.
Yes.
And then you could say, then the next stage is when you try to introduce some kind of for their own benefit. Like, let me see if you can guess this. Handful of times I've talked to girls about their degree choices. The girl says, I'm going to major in journalism. I say, that is a stupid major. You're going to be poor. You're going to be financially destitute. Look at your millennial elder sisters. What's their reaction?
Like, I'm going to do it anyway. Or like, that's not me. Whenever I bring up statistics to women, they're like, those statistics don't count for me.
Okay.
Or my favorite one is, statistics don't cover everyone. And I'm like, yes, they do. That's why they're called statistics. They cover everyone.
I wish it was that nice.
Yeah.
I'm immediately misogynist. Why are you killing my dreams? Like, I'm the bad guy.
Yeah.
And I only got so much time in my life. I am not going to waste it trying to convince women to do the right thing. And so having this concept of the perfect mental state is like, look, they're not going to listen. They aren't. They really aren't. And you could be the most well-intended person. Like, look, you really ought to do this. And it goes back to, look, you're going to fuck this guy. You know, you could say, don't fuck this guy, but that ruins she wants to fuck the guy.
You're going to keep sleeping with him. He's never going to commit. You're going to end up hurt. And everything I just said, while I do appreciate saying it, and I'm playing Madden, like I don't even like, but you're going to go fuck him in probably 48 hours. Take care.
All she heard was, you're going to go fuck him. And then she filled in the rest. And then he's going to finally commit to me.
Yeah.
And you can make, Oprah made billions off of it.
Sure.
She made billions off of that. Like, oh yeah, you could be a pain in the ass woman and you can be married to whoever was hot back in the 80s. I don't know. Mel Gibson. But yeah, that is kind of where, and it's not that I don't want to help women. If you come to my consulting thing and you know, I'm like, okay, you got to do this and you got to do that. But once I'm paid, I don't care if you follow my advice anymore.
It is really interesting how I don't mind women recognizing that they get certain advantages for being hot. I don't mind that. What I have a problem with is when they don't realize that's why they're getting those advantages. I remember when I used to work at the strip club, this one girl came to me and was like, hey, John has a boat and all of the girls, we all go on the boat on the weekends. You should come out with us. And I was like, John doesn't want me to come on his fucking boat. Are you done? Like, do you really? It was like, no. He's so nice. I'm like, of course he's nice to you. He's trying to fuck you. Like, do you really not? What?
No, they don't.
Dude, my favorite was, so my girlfriend was a bartender. And so but when we first met, she didn't. She lived in Houston. I lived in Vegas. And she would call me from her work while she's bartending, put the phone on FaceTime and just sit there her whole shift and just FaceTime with me while I was doing stuff. And we would get into debates about stuff. And she'd be like, well, all the guys at the bar agree with me, Michael. All the guys, let me get the hot 21-year-old with big fake boobs and blue eyes is sitting there having a debate with her boyfriend. And all the guys at the bar agree with you, babe. It must be because, you know what? The Nobel Prize, it's yours. Yep. Clearly, you figured out something. And it's like crazy when she does this whole thing. And I try to explain to her, because my girlfriend's smart. But I try to explain to her, like, you're smart. But a lot of people agreed with the other day. She goes, I went to Fit Club LV and everyone was so nice to me. Get the fuck out of here.
Wow.
Everyone was nice to you. All these dudes with hyper levels of testosterone were nice to you. Stop it. I can't believe this, babe. That's crazy they were nice to you. You should come with me. Everyone there's nice. They're not going to be nice to me. They're not going to be nice to me. Anyway, so the funny thing is, like, from her standpoint, she's smart, but the problem is, I think she still, at this point, hasn't come to the realization how many times she wasn't told no because of how physically attractive she was. And she like kind of grasped it, but she doesn't understand. It was like, even when she was right, she wasn't being told she was right because she was right. She was being told she was right because she was hot. And she still doesn't grasp this. And so that goes back to what you were saying before.
Well, have we convinced one woman in America that we don't give a shit about your degree
or your education? Isn't that crazy?
You haven't convinced. There's not one woman that's been convinced because she has. What's your why should a guy date you? Well, I have a master's degree. It's like, oh my God, the perfect mental state. They want you to like them for their master's degree.
Yes,
and you could tell them no. It's because you got a nice landing strip that you sent me one time, and I want to plow that. No, it's because they have whatever, their degree, their office, and you have fun trying to change that. I'm done banging my head against the table, and I'm going to go have a cigar instead.
She'll go to like some store, like some weed place. They gave me free weed. Shut the fuck up. They gave you free weed, honey. I can't believe it. It's a miracle. He goes, yeah, we went to this bar. They're so nice to me that they gave you free drinks. No way. They gave you free drinks. I can't believe this.
Did I tell you at the strip club, the gal who was giving me a lap dance said she really liked me.
That's what happened.
That's what happened.
It's genuine.
Love.
There must have been no ulterior motive at all. The concept, I thought was funny, white male as a brand. Can you go over that? What does that mean?
Well, that was a one-off video.
Yeah.
Where, God, I'm trying to remember the punchline to it. It was like giving it back to the people who are all about identity politics, but like white guy as a brand. I think it was like there was a military recruitment video that came out and was all white guys are like, oh shit, we really are going to war. They got the white guys out now. So I'm thinking like white guy approved. So it ain't complete woke trash, or white guy approved because the bridge won't collapse. But I'd have to watch the video again. But the whole idea, like deep down inside, if you want your car not to blow up, white guy engineering, that kind of thing. So I'm sure it was something spoofy like that. But.
The concept, I thought was interesting was the other one where you talk about doing it all, right? And you had people saying, you mentioned Rollo Tomasi as an example where he has a live stream and he also writes books. Mm-hmm. He has a blog. He's also writing on his blog. He's constantly creating content for people, and he has a wife and a daughter who recently got married, and he rescues animals, and he has multiple homes. Like, he does it all. And you said you had some clients that were like, should I go get the master's degree or should I go to the gym? I get these two also. I was like, Michael, should I work on my social circle or should I go to the gym? And I'm like, bitch, both. What the fuck what do I do every day?
It's the two. Look, I've said it before. No one gets rich off a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
You do not have success with a 40-hour work. That's just cruising speed. And it's people who are looking for the easy way out. Like, well, if I just do this one thing, and like I went to school and worked full time. It was a nightmare, but I got it done. The real core problem there is that they're lazy. It's not that they have a choice. So I'll get these people like, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? And I'm like, how about you get a job and move out of your house? That'd be your mom's house. How about that for step one? Because you could say, should I major in engineering or chemical engineering or civil engineering? It's like, oh, yeah, but you work 20 hours a week at Wendy's and still live at home and you're addicted to pot because your email you sent was absolute pot garbage. And no,
my favorite is I don't want to go to the gym because I'm going to get too big. That one?
I've never heard that one.
Oh,
really?
I've heard that one. The other one is, hey, Michael, I don't... it's like, I'm afraid to post this on my social media because I'm afraid of like what people will think about me. And I'm like, bitch, you have no followers. Like, no one cares. No one cares. The idea that the arrogance to believe that anyone gives a shit what you post is so crazy to me, dude. You're fucking no one. You don't have big fake boobs. No one cares what you post. It's just crazy to me. Like, the level of arrogance and narcissism and neuroticism you would believe and I constantly get this from these clients, and it's like, It's one thing, you with 6 bikini models. I get it. Totally. You work you're an attorney. Don't post that. I totally understand. But it's like something where he's like he's on a red carpet with girls in gowns and they're like collecting teddy bears for a toy drive. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I should post it. Like, the fuck is wrong with you, dude? It's so crazy. You're like, you live in a country where a man fucked a porn star while his wife was pregnant and we elected him president, and you're worried about posting a meme. What is wrong with you, dude?
We've had this conversation before where you said, what was it? Something like 16% of people actually finish any kind of courses.
Oh, bro, it's like 16% of people when they buy a course. That's what Ryan Stubin told me.
I'll tell you, all they want when they ask you for the question is they want the treatment. Say, I did something, so I feel good. Like I consult. I took it.
Yeah.
I'll one up you. I don't know if you've ever had this. So I have that minimalism course. I charge with taxes. It's around $500 plus or minus a little bit depending on your sales tax. This is a course to teach you how to get rid of your spending addiction, and I charge you $500. The reason I charge $500 not only because I'm greedy, but I want you to take it fucking seriously.
Yes.
I had a guy. All right, so you have 45 days. You sign up. You have 45 days to complete the class. I get an email from a guy. He signed up. He paid for it. Guess what? Didn't take the class. Want to know if I could open up the class for him again? I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I have, my course is 6 months long, and I constantly have to do that. It's just like the dude didn't even start. Like,
didn't even open it up.
It's just madness, bro. Like, seeing that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's just like this week in my course and all my calls, I have been reiterating to the guys, you must do the core protocol. I have 114 modules that they are supposed to all do, and these guys are like still watching some video in the free course, and I'm like, no, bro, you paid for the modules, you will do the modules, and I'm like, when you're eating, when you're fucking playing video games, I don't care if you're on the treadmill, when you're driving, you're going to listen to my shit at double speed and take notes if you need to, but you got to get through this course. And they're always looking for a shortcut. And I'm like, my course is the shortcut. Your course is the shortcut. Yep. You don't need a shortcut in the shortcut. If you're going to buy a course, take the course. Last question I want to ask you, because we talked about, men taking themselves out of the market and trying to understand the dating market. And trying to understand the concept of why that is, like why things are very difficult, how much effort, how many left swipes, and how much time and resources and money men have to expend in order to get a date. And one of the things you did talk about as far on the positive side is the concept of finding friends and how important that is. That's something that's been very, very instrumental for me. Finding friends who bring me more opportunity, finding friends who I can count on, finding friends who I can get advice from. Can you talk about that concept? Leave on a positive note here.
Well, the life is not just the girlsa.
Yeah.
There's and God Almighty, my life would be a fraction of what it was if I didn't have my friends. And if you're not going to have a family, you're not going to have a wife, you're not going to have kids, all you got is your friends, because your family and maybe your family will be around for a while, but inevitably they're going to die, your parents are going to pass away. This assumes optimistically you even like your family or are talking to them. And so the only thing that really matters in this life, as far as I've been concerned, is the other interaction with other human beings, a conversation with them. And so it's having these relationships with your friends who hang out with you voluntarily. They like you for you. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to cajole them. You don't have to woo them with flowers. And the best thing, like my buddy Vince at Masculine Kinks, he'll come up and I could just get a text. And he's like, get your dick out of that guy's asshole. It's just like, that's my buddy. Yeah, then we exchange. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's what you need, because if you're not going to have a family, your friends become your family. And it absolutely is. And then there's other things like they might know a place to work, you have community, you have safety in numbers in case there's a problem, and all these other added benefits. But spiritually, philosophically, emotionally, psychologically, yeah, you need your friends. And if any other reason, I understand some people are more introverts and they don't like really to go outside, but you should make some efforts to go out. Like, you've made friends on the internet if you've been out. Well, go do a road trip and meet up with them. Go to the nerd convention, like Comic-Cons or whatever, hang out with your buddies. Go take the time to do it, because the day will come, they'll be dead or you'll be dead, and that opportunity is long gone.
Yeah, it's so important. Like I said before, I believe the apex of human existence is men accomplishing goals together. When it comes to this, your protection comes from your network, but also scalable amounts of wealth comes from your network, and having a funnel where women that you would be attracted to that could be possible life partners that can also come through a network. So I cannot, above all else, fitness probably number one, but after that, having a strong network, knowing how to build a network, knowing how to be a good leader, a good communicator, and knowing how to do things for people without asking for anything in return, which is a great way to grow your network. I think you can't have much more importance than that. So that's awesome. You've got 10 books out now. Where can people find you, your books, and Asshole Consulting?
You can find me at assholeconsulting.com. Any other platform, just search Aaron Clary, you'll find it. YouTube is my flagship, I guess, platform, so you can see all the videos there, kind of see what I do. It's more entertaining. Books, obviously, on Amazon. The main ones germane to the topic, we kind of talked about them. A World Without Men, Economic Analysis Without Women. The Book of Numbers, Analyzing the ROI in the Pursuit of Women. Really practical we didn't talk about today would be Bachelor Pad Economics. That's all financial advice you ever need in one book. Curse of the High IQ, you like that one. Enjoy the Decline. And then, the menu. I'd say the menu would be, because that's very progressive. It's like, what should I do? So if you're laying around and my life sucks, I'm like, go get that. It literally is a menu, like it's organized like one, and it will give you purpose and reason in life, whether or not there happens to be a significant other. And I'd say that's probably the most optimistic one that I have.
Guys, double speed on Audible, you could get through every one of those books in a month. All of them together. I'm not kidding. Man, thank you so much for coming out. I'm really glad we got to do this. We should do a live stream together. I think we should do. I would love for you to come on and do some Q&A.
Well, I'm here now.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Awesome, man. We're glad to have everybody back. Cappy's back in Vegas. Rollo's going to be back next month. We're going to have a bunch more coming your way, a bunch more guests. I'm really excited. I should put this one. This is going to be my first podcast of the new year. I'm not going to have one during Christmas. So I'm really grateful. I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the fact that so many of you people have come to me whenever I walk around and told me that you really appreciate the stuff that I'm doing. Occasionally, I don't know if this has happened to you before, but some of the things that I say get taken out of context, or I'll have 10 messages and only one of the messages is the one that I'm the most known for. And that's not necessarily what I want. And I really do appreciate that so many of you have come out and said you've watched the entire podcast, or you've sent one of my reels to someone else. I just want to let you know, no matter what happens in the future, I'm never going to take for granted the fact that I get to do this podcast for you guys. I don't have any sponsors. I don't do this for money. And I really do appreciate the fact that so many of you guys have come and joined, especially in the last year. I had 18,000 subs and now I'm at 78,000. And hopefully get to 100K here pretty soon, man. So I really do appreciate you guys, and I will see all of you next week.